And this interview has the fascinating title, Interview with a Master. Interview with a Master. Now you might think, gee, maybe he's interviewing Jack Canfield. He's a master. Maybe Dr. John Gray. He's a master of men-women relationships. No. Sometimes I bring you my dear friends who are world famous, but sometimes I bring you someone you might never find out about in your whole life. And I brought one today. His name is Dmitry Badiarov, and I'm certain, I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Absolutely.
And good, thank you. But I can't tell you about him because when I read his resume, it was filled with words in a different language because he travels the world and has done things in so many languages. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself so that I don't make horrible pronunciation mistakes. Dmitry, can you please tell us about yourself and how you are a master in everything violin?
Raymond, thank you so much for this sweet introduction. First of all, you nailed it. You pronounced my name absolutely correctly. So it's Dmitry Badiarov. And kudos on this because it's a tricky name. So even lots of my native countrymen in Russia not quite always sure how to pronounce this name. So, well, yeah, I am mainly known for two things, which is the reintroduction of the old masters, old violin makers, acoustical concepts. And this is what I'm writing my book on fine violin making. And besides this, I am best known for the revival of the violoncello da spalla, the instrument that our viewers on this video can see behind my shoulder. So it's the predecessor of the modern day cello. And once upon a time, which is in the 17th and 18th century, this instrument was an instrument or the instrument of choice for many very important composers. And I have had the blessing to be able to revive this instrument, and I made it for a number of really outstanding musicians. So these are the two things I'm mainly known for. And lately, my biggest passion these days, I love doing nothing more than, well, still creating instruments for serious professional musicians. So these are soloist grade instruments, and also teaching other instrument makers how to create a way more successful and way more profitable instrument making business.
Now, making a violin doesn't just happen. You didn't maybe take an extracurricular course in high school and say, gee, I'm good at this. How on earth did you get into violin making for the masters?
What a question. It will take our listeners on a whole journey. So the story began in 1980, and I was 11 years of age. And I want to invite our listeners on a journey. So imagine yourself in Nalchik, which is a small town, the capital of Kabardino-Balkaria. It's very south of Russia. And imagine yourself in a small room of a dormitory belonging to the local opera house. And there is nothing in that room. It's just like a bed, a wardrobe, a table, a chair. But through the window, and it's an open window, you see an immense fruit garden, all in blossom, an ocean of pink and white, extending all the way to the horizon. And the horizon is culminating into the chain of the Great Caucasus Mountains with its glaciers, wonderful, spectacular view. And in the middle of the room, you see a music stand and me, 11 years of age, trying to play the violin. And the scene would be really spectacular if not the terrible sound of the violin. So at a certain moment, you see my professor telling, no, Dmitry, that's not how you express yourself on the violin. You have to move the bow slowly. You have to put the fingers with just the right pressure. And he says, repeat it again. So I repeat that exercise again and again and again. At a certain moment, discouraged, I sigh, I stop playing, I put the violin on the table and I tell him, Semyon Grigorievich, please look at your violin and look at my violin. Your violin is so beautiful and my violin is so crudely made. It doesn't matter how hard I play. I will never sound like you. Would you please introduce me to the instrument maker in the town so he can fix my instrument? that was it. So he introduced me to this instrument maker. But then this instrument maker was almost a magician. Imagine a man in his 60s, maybe 70s, very round, bald, with enormous eyeglasses sitting on his very prominent nose. And it's this kind of eyeglasses, I don't know what you call them, where the lens acts almost like a magnifying glass. So you see giant eyes and a big smile, if you can picture that. And everything was incredible about him. There was an aura. He was like from a fairy tale, and all these unusual instruments around in the workshop. And I don't know what came upon me, but instead of asking him, please, would you fix my violin? I said, would you please teach me to become a violin maker? I fell in love with
Wow.
I just fell in love with this guy. And that's how my journey has begun. So I was 11 years of age. He taught me to fix my instrument. It was terrible, terrible, terrible violin. Sure thing, it didn't become an Italian violin worth millions today, but it was much better. And that made me exponentially better violinist. And I felt so inspired. I fixed my violin of my brother. My brother is a really good violinist. And he also became a much better player. I was so inspired. Then I just kept fixing violins for all of the students of my professor. But even not this is the main point. The main point is the charismatic personality of my great master, because during 5 years he was teaching me, what he has done is spectacular. And I mean that. Because he recreated the lost musical culture of that small republic in the southern Russia. And in 5 years of dedicated work of love, he created enough instruments for 2 orchestras. So when these 2 orchestras were first publicly announced, there was a sense of renaissance in the air. There was like people of this republic for the first time after 70 years of communism, just to take our listeners, put them into this perspective. For the first time since 70 years, people of that republic rediscovered that they had their own traditional music. There was a party, there was a feast. And I looked at this man and I thought, oh my God, as I'm speaking now, I have goosebumps as if I'm reliving the story right now. I fell in love with him even deeper because I thought, oh my goodness, if instrument making can produce that sort of immense happiness, fulfillment, pride, wow, I want to be a violin maker and I want to do something like he has done, which is revive something lost in music culture. And I believe music culture is important. So for me, it is all about this. I believe music culture is important. And here's why. Gandhi shared once, the culture of a nation resides in the hearts and in the souls of its people. The culture resides in the hearts. Now, what is the opposite of culture? If we go to Thesaurus, the opposite of culture is ignorance, harm, violence, which is why I feel it is a really good idea to fill people's heart with culture. And that is what inspires me so much as an instrument maker. And this is why I dedicated my entire life to finding out something I could do differently and bring back to life some forgotten page in the culture of classical music. And that includes the ancient masters' acoustical concepts. And this is the book, the forthcoming book is about that. And the violoncello da spalla, the instrument which you see behind my shoulder. Well, listeners on a podcast cannot see, but they will see this in the video, hopefully. By the way, if you want to, I can play a few notes for you on this instrument. So this is what
please stop right now and play something.
Of course, with a lot of pleasure, Raymond. It's just I beg a second of time.
Oh, I had no idea this would happen. This is so exciting.
It's nice to surprise you with something. So let me grab this instrument.
Go ahead. I will just keep our listeners entertained while you get ready. Yeah, this is startling. I thought we were just going to be talking about your being a master, but you're actually going to be masterful for us right now. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a delight. What a delight. Now, my audio listeners can hear that that was probably too low for a violin. And my viewers could see that it was bigger than a violin, but smaller than a cello. And a cello stands upright, but you had it strapped around your neck. So, what was that? It's
Whoa.
littler than a cello and
Yeah.
bigger than a violin. What is it?
Yeah, wonderful question, Raymond. So, my violin making workshop, known as Badiarov Violins, is mainly known for the reintroduction of this instrument. So, this instrument has a very fascinating story. This is the predecessor of the modern day cello. And in the 17th century, when musical instruments were not standardized the way they are standardized today, the violoncello was made in a variety of sizes. And when it was small, violinists, violists, important composers such as Johann Sebastian Bach, I played the piece by Johann Sebastian Bach, he was a violinist, he was a violist, and he could play, and he did, this music for cello on the cello of this size. So in the 17th century or 18th century, composers did not call it violoncello da spalla, they called it simply violoncello. But today we call it violoncello da spalla to differentiate from the standard cello. And yeah, this was a labor of love, and was very fascinating how this instrument was reborn, because Once on a Concert Tour was amazing concert tour with world-famous orchestra, La Petite Bande, and I was blessed to be a core member of this orchestra for 12 years. After one of very successful performances, it was in Bilbao, in Spain, we had drinks with my friends at the bar of the hotel. And conversation was flowing in Italian. Italian happened to be the international language in this group. And at a certain moment, my conductor approached us and he said, well, Dmitry, what do you think about violoncello da spalla? Do you think it has ever existed? And I said, yes, I think so. And do you think that you could reconstruct it? I didn't expect this kind of question. This instrument was completely lost. completely forgotten. And I said, well, yes, probably, yes, I can try to do that. And that followed by several months of full-time research. And then finally the instrument was recreated. And this was a big success because it was in the hand of this very famous musician, Sigiswald Koken, the conductor of La Petite Band. And the whole thing picked up. And then eventually he even asked me, would you, Dmitry, please write all the articles about your research, because we believe that this research is not conducted by anyone else, and that will help our orchestra to get maximum possible sponsorship or grant from the government. And it worked. So this worked, helped the orchestra to get 3 million euros, and that enabled quite a lot of musicians to play many concerts all around the world and create.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I see something similar between you and me. When I was 39 years old, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was $100,000 in debt. My wife had just dumped me out of our marriage. My boss had just fired me. It was horrible. I was a 39-year-old life loser. And somehow I was similar to you when you were 11, because at 11, you fell in love with this wonderful character, and he guided you through 5 years of apprenticeship to make you the master you are today. And what happened to me when I was 39, my parents took me on a trip to Mexico, which I accepted because I was broke and they were paying for it. And sitting on top of a pyramid in the Mayan ruins called Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula, sitting there, it was after dark. The park had closed, but there was no real security. So I was sitting on top of this monument in the total darkness, and I heard in my head, Raymond, you're a teacher. And I thought I was a mathematician. I thought I was a physicist. I didn't think I was a teacher. I'd never taught before. I didn't know what God was talking about. And I went back to my hometown of Toronto, and I tried for a year to get a teaching job, and I failed and failed and failed. But then somebody said, gee, you've made a lot of money in real estate. Why don't you tell friends of mine how you did that? And I said, what, friends of yours? I don't get it. And they said, rent a hotel room and put an ad in the paper and make a presentation and tell them about a course you're offering. And I did it. And that launched my career, which is now almost 40 years old. I started in May of 1983, and I've traveled the world, and I enjoy my life so fully, so exquisitely. I love every second of being on the stage. And when I get up on stage, I never, ever say, I am wonderful, I am great, they're going to really enjoy me. Never, ever that. It's always, oh my gosh, there's going to be people here who are going to be deeply moved. Raymond, do your best job ever, because you never know who's in the audience and what lives you're going to touch.
Wow.
And so in my life, I've been called arrogant or whatever, but never on stage. Never on stage. I'm only thinking of my clients on stage, or who could be my client. And in fact, most of my dearest friends now are people I met when they were in the audience. Indeed, my wife, I found my wife in the audience. Yeah. So I teach them, I marry them, I fall in love with them. And I see a big similarity. You don't make a cello because it's your job or because someone commissioned you. You make it out of deep, heartfelt love. And I'm the same on stage. So I feel a brotherhood to you.
Wow, Raymond.
And I know on stage that there's certain things that I do that make my presentation dazzling. And I know there's things that people do who aren't very qualified, who totally wreck their time on stage. And my guess is that you, as a violin maker, have the same knack. There's certain things, if you get this particular thing right, the violin is going to sing. And if you get it slightly wrong, it's not going to work. So let us into your mastery. Tell us a secret, or tell us a technique, or tell us something about building a cello that is your uniqueness. What's specialty? What is it?
Yeah, I would gladly share this. I want to begin by sharing something else because your amazing story on your passion for teaching, that strongly resonates with me. And in January 19, 2013 to be exact, I had a life-changing near-death experience. Well, essentially I had a major health crisis which almost killed, and the doctors told me, Dmitry, nobody knows if you will be ever able to speak again, walk again normally. Probably cannot play instruments again anymore. You probably cannot make instruments again. Well, essentially, they were not sure if I would ever start to walk again. I was in the bed and I was unable to move my body. I was half paralyzed. And it was my dear wife who inspired me to see life in a new way. And she said, Dmitry, look, don't worry about being on stage or making instruments. What if you just teach other people how to be great instrument makers? And she helped me to discover this incredible passion for teaching other people, and which is what I enjoy to do. But coming back to your question, sorry, it was a bit of a detour. Coming back to your question, I want to share with you a story. So it is 1988 or 9, and you are in Spain, in Mérida. Maybe have you been there in Mérida?
In Spain? I've been to Spain, yes.
Mérida in Spain. Mérida. There is a Roman amphitheater in Spain, in Mérida.
I'm not sure if I've been to that.
Okay. Well, imagine the ruins of a Roman theater. It is 2,000 years old. And it's midnight, July. It's very warm. And the sky is full of stars. And there's tropical plants. It smells wonderful, these flowers. And on the stage of this Roman amphitheater, you see a symphony orchestra, and celebrated conductor Mstislav Rostropovich is conducting Romeo and Juliet by Prokofiev. And I'm there in the orchestra sitting, and I feel completely flabbergasted by the amazing acoustics of this site. It's open air. Well, it doesn't sound like church. It doesn't sound like maybe the finest concert hall on planet Earth, but it definitely doesn't sound like open air. It sounds wonderful. It sounds better than majority of opera theaters, yet it is open air. And it struck me that moment, goodness, these ancient masters, they knew something that the modern masters have no clue about. What on planet Earth did they use to make this open air venue sound like it is not an open venue? Wow. And I decided to dedicate my life to finding this out. And actually I did. So I did find out what it is, what they were familiar with, the ancient masters. And it is music. Believe it or not, it's music. So what do I mean by this? Music. It's musical or harmonical ratios, harmonical proportions. Now, why harmonical proportions, and what are they exactly? So, well, as Pythagoras, or Vitruvius puts it, the Roman architect, the 6th century before Christ, I believe. He puts it this way: harmonical divisions are divisions of any vibrating body that results in musical intervals. When we play instruments, we stop strings, and the proportions in which we stop those strings, they result in musical intervals. So this is what they used. They used musical intervals to design those beautifully sounding theaters. They used these musical intervals to design musical instruments like that. And it is very well documented in not that many, but quite a number of historical sources. And I dedicated 30 plus years to learn what the ancient masters teach us about music in things, and then create a system around that and make it a very simple system. And I believe that it had to be a simple system, because if it was a complicated system, well, the ancient authors would leave a treatise, a book about how to design violins. Because the truth is, look, ancient masters, architects, painters, philosophers, musicians, mathematicians, they wrote a book about everything, but not about violin making. Why not about violin making? Well, there is one authority in the 17th century who wrote in a giant volume on music. We are not going to speak about violins because violins is such a simple and such a well-known object. We wish he wrote a little bit more about this. but the truth is, the ancient masters didn't write a book because it was a very simple system, and that was musical intervals. Now, what do I mean by this? If musical intervals are music and they can be translated into a melody, then you can remember the proportions of an instrument as a melody. You can whistle it, you can sing it. And this is why a 5 years young child can understand and remember it forever. And if that melody is out of tune, then the instrument is not going to sound great. So these are the things that an instrument maker needs to take care of, is keep those musical proportions in tune, and that will result in an amazing instrument. And this is not even my invention. I'm almost quoting from an ancient authority on this.
Aha. Do you know, I wasn't at that place that you mentioned in Spain, but with a dear friend of mine, his name is Lon, we attended a concert in the Baths of Caracalla in Rome. And I had that exact same experience of being in the open air in the Mediterranean summer, wondering, this sounds different than if they were just doing it in a field. What's the difference? What are these? And it wasn't even complete. It was, of course, a ruin. How does this ruin make the music sound great?
Yeah.
And it's the proportions. I didn't realize that. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Very,
it's
very
the proportions. So the ancient masters, they didn't have very high-tech equipment we use today. They didn't have modern science of acoustics the way we know it today, but they were very good observers, and they observed the nature of the sound. What are the overtones? What are the proportions of those overtones? And how you amplify those overtones by building a vibrating body that will vibrate sympathetically with those overtones. As simple as that.
Great. Now I want to ask the question again, but with an emphasis on the instrument itself. What is it that you do? What is it that you're thinking about when you're building an instrument to make sure that you do and make sure that you don't not do? Like what is the thing that you're working on to make sure works?
It's something very different from a majority of instrument makers. Look, the truth is, when a customer comes to you, let's say you are an instrument maker, a customer comes to you and they will start speaking, Raymond, I admire your work. You are my Antonio Stradivari. You are amazing. I want to buy an instrument that has a warm sound, amazing projection, and rich tone, and these kind of things. And the truth is, it's not what they want. Even if they believe this is what they want, it is never what they want. So when an instrument player, a serious musician, comes to you and they want to buy an amazing instrument, I usually conduct a very deep conversation. So they would say, yes, I hear what you're saying. You like warm tone and projection. But what does that mean to you? Because the truth is, there are as many definitions of warm tone as there are musicians. For every musician, the same thing means different things. But at the end, it's not about the warm tone. It's about what on planet Earth, why do you want an instrument? What do you want to achieve in your career? Or what is not working for you right now? What we are going to solve once and for all with that instrument that's specifically designed and crafted for you. And that usually leads to a really deep conversation with my customers. And Raymond, it's so beautiful. I love this the most, because when you talk deeply, seriously with your customer and you help them to discover what they want, because some of them even come to me and they are not in the beginning aware of actually what they want to achieve. So people cry here in this workshop when I take them on this journey of discovery, what they want, and then we discuss what kind of character of the instrument feel, how it will fit them. I want to share with you one story. It's a beautiful, touching story. There is this customer of mine, Laura, and she was playing with pain her entire life. Why? Because she's a very tiny lady. She's not big at all. And any standard size violin would be enormously big for her, which means it was just painful. And she was looking for an instrument 10 years or something, and she couldn't find. So when she came here, I told her, well, okay, Laura, let's fix this. So give me a drawing of your hand. So she left a picture of her hand here on my bench. And then around this picture of her hand, I created the design for her violin. Then she came a few months or a year later. She came here. She entered this workshop. I gave her the violin. Imagine the sounds of violin pouring from this room. And I left her for a second. I went to the kitchen. I brought some coffee or tea or something like this. And as I entered the room, I see her and she's crying. I see a tear running down her cheek. And I felt frightened. I thought, oh, goodness, maybe she doesn't like it. Maybe I screwed it up. Maybe there's something wrong with the instrument. And I asked her, Laura, are you okay? And then she said, Dmitry, it's the first time in my life I'm playing the violin without pain.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, you know. And now she's playing this violin, and she left a beautiful testimonial on my website telling that, wow, this violin fits me everything. It fits my body, it fits my music, it fits my lifestyle. It's just amazing thing to create this kind of instruments. And that's what I take care about. It's not just the sound, but it's much, 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 much deeper than that, if you see what I mean. It's a really personal connection with the musician who wants to achieve something. And the instrument is the vehicle to get them from where they are to where they want to be. The instrument is a vehicle.
I love that story.
Look, like your training is a vehicle. Your training, I love your training. I love your 10-10-10 by publishing. This is a vehicle. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this. Look, I've been trying or procrastinating to write my book for 15 years. I'm really embarrassed to admit, because normally I'm not the procrastinator type of person. I decide and I try to do things, but I was waiting for this. And you helped me to get this stuff done.
I'm glad I did. I have another question for you. When I walk into a room and there's a speaker on stage, I can tell within seconds if he's a good speaker, if there's going to be a standing ovation, or if people are going to buy his product at the end, if he's offering something. Within seconds, I can tell. And I know exactly within minutes, 3 or 4 errors that he's making throughout his entire presentation. And no one in the audience knows, but I know.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that since you're a master in your area, that you can look at an instrument or play it for less than a minute and know exactly what's wrong and what you can do to fix it.
Yeah.
Comment on that, please.
Yes. Well, I make my life really easy. So what do I mean by this? So I work on commission. I don't make just an instrument and then see if it will fit anyone. That is the hardest, the most terrible way to create a business around instrument making, try to make profit from that passion of yours. It's very, very difficult. It's nearly impossible. And sadly, majority of instrument makers are choosing that route. So they build the instrument first, and then they see if it will fit anyone. My secret is meet the musician first, and then design the instrument that would fit their dream. That is my secret. Wow. That is my approach to instrument making. It's so much easier. How long does it take you?
How long does it take to make a violin or a cello?
Yes, it takes between 200 and 300 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Dmitry, I had no idea what would happen in this interview. Not even the tiniest idea, but I knew you were a master and that there was great wealth of wisdom. And I loved it. I really enjoyed this interview. Now, I don't know if there's some masterful violinist or cellist who's listening and who's dying to commission you, but people might be interested in contacting you for some other reasons. How would they contact you?
Thank you very much, Raymond. Great questions. So they can easily find me on my website, which is Badiarov Violins. That is my family name, badiarovviolins.com. And I'm extremely searchable. I'm on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm everywhere. Even if they simply type Violoncello da Spalla, 100% they will find me as well. But my main website is badiarovviolins.com. And by the way, the website of my academy, that's where I teach instrument makers how to be way more successful in instrument making, is AuthenticInstrumentMakersAcademy.com.
Say it slower.
Authentic Instrument Makers Academy. So there are 4 words, AuthenticInstrumentMakersAcademy.com. That's
AuthenticInstrumentMakersAcademy.com.
Yep.
And your last name is spelled Badiarov, as in Victor. Wonderful. Perfect. I'm so happy that we did this interview. I'm so happy that I took a chance, that knowing that you're a master, you'd have gems for us, even though I didn't know what they were in the beginning. Thank you so much. I'm honored that I met you. I'm really glad that you had part of my mastery teaching you how to write a book. And I'm glad that I've had part of your mastery learning about your amazing skill in making instruments specially designed for individual people. Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Raymond. It's been an enormous pleasure talking to you.